Last week, Indigenous Affairs Minister Linda Burney was insisting that violence in the Northern Territory was under control and that coalition MPs were instead exploiting the issue as a political football.
The statistics are heading in the right direction in Alice Springs. There has been substantial reduction in presentations to the emergency ward and substantial reductions in call-outs for domestic violence, dramatic changes, which is not being reflected, unfortunately, by the use of Alice Springs as a political football that we're seeing right now.
Well, it turned out to be so under control that a woman was murdered in Darwin over the weekend, collapsing in a hotel lobby just a few metres away from Linda Burney herself. Now, to their credit, the minister's staff apparently tried to administer first aid while the minister comforted the victim's family. But under the circumstances, it's pretty hard to maintain the lie when confronted with this sort of reality that law and order is being well managed in the Territory. Of course, the Minister and the Government will say that this just shows we need a constitutionally entrenched Indigenous voice. Nothing else has worked, they'll say, so let's give the voice a go. But hang on, more talk isn't going to fix this. What's needed is for the police to do their job and not be hamstrung by the need for kid-glove treatment on the grounds of culture. The voice would not be a fresh start. It would be doubling down on failure, as I said yesterday in my Sunday Telegraph column. To make things better, kids have to go to school. Adults have to be in work, and everyone has to avoid breaking the law. The sort of life we expect people to live in the rest of Australia, but that we don't demand for and from Aboriginal Australians. This is what's needed, and this is what's been absent for the past generation, but we'll never get that back by talking about dispossession and intergenerational racism and a separatist voice. Meanwhile, because he spoke this uncomfortable truth, because he spoke out against child abuse, multiple Labor ministers have hit out at Peta Credlin and Jacinta Nampijinpa-Price, including the NT Minister for Police, who's actually responsible for this whole mess in her home territory.
What we've seen over the last couple of days from Peta Credlin in Central Australia is absolutely opportunistic game playing, political game playing, and using the most vulnerable people here in the heart of our nation in Central Australia as a pawn in that game. It's quite frankly a dog act.
And here's the Prime Minister today weighing in.
What we know is that some suggestions have been raised in the last week. Including yesterday. If there are matters of child abuse occurs, then that's a crime and it should be reported to the police.
Beyond the PM, others too attacked Dutton and Price for supposedly not reporting individual cases of abuse to the police, even suggesting that they might be in breach of their legal responsibilities. Now, take it from me, this is a brazen attempt to suck in the gullible. Now, I know how this works. Politicians meet with nurses and police and social workers who then tell them that things are dire, and they mention instances to their knowledge of abuse. Now, for privacy reasons, I've been there when those conversations are had. You don't get the names, you don't get the addresses, and nor should you know that as politicians and staff. It's not like Dutton and Price are personally witnessing abuse. They're hearing and reporting the testimony of people who've seen and heard and mended the abuse, and people who no doubt would have already passed it on because they have to under mandatory reporting rules. But at least some Labor people know the truth and are honest enough to speak up. Today, the Labor member for Lingiari, Marion Scrimgeour, told the NT Police Minister, that's the one I played before that accused Dutton of a dog act, that she should do her job rather than attack others, and that she'd often called on her own party to back mechanisms to manage the welfare of families who weren't looking after their kids. It seems what's needed in Canberra is not a voice to say what we already know, but an ear to hear those whose voices aren't being heeded.